And we're live.
And we're live, yes. Okay, welcome everyone.
Thank you.
Super excited to those of us who could make it tonight. So this is an interesting, let me go to the questions here. This is a different kind of case because it was a sad one.
It was.
Yeah. But at the same time, so riveting. Like to see how many levels of falling apart happened.
Yeah. So what is the issue? What kind of problems did they have?
I feel like it might be easier to say what problems they didn't have. But I feel like it started with kind of a lazy attitude.
Okay.
Like, well, this is all really complex and it's hard to coordinate, so we're just gonna, like, I couldn't believe that it downgraded. The foam falling off problem started out as like a big investigated issue and went all the way down to we don't need to investigate this.
Yeah, it was a big a lot of organizational issues, and they couldn't get it together.
For me, the issues were that I feel like NASA was too focused on I didn't think their priorities were very good in line. I thought they were too focused on timelines and budgets. When you're dealing with lives, with human lives, I think that should be your number one priority as far as their safety, and not, oh, well, let's just lower the severity grade of this problem because we don't have time to fix it. You know, we've got budgets and we've got timelines. We got to get this next shuttle out or whatever. And so that to me is their root issue right there.
Excellent. Yeah, I agree that. Yeah.
So their priorities were messed up. They also had technical problems, obviously.
Where they did not investigate.
Okay, so the next question is...
Oh, sorry, real quick, can I just add one?
Yeah.
There was also a lot of, like, bureaucracy going on where what was needed could not make it all the way through the line of communication to where it needed to go. It kept getting stopped somewhere up the chain. There were way too many links in the chain to get some vital information, like a picture of damage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, it should not have been that complicated, nor should that woman have been able to have the authority to say, they don't actually need that. This isn't a big enough problem, so we're not going to get it to them. Like, I felt like that should never have happened if you were a good manager.
Mm-hmm.
And as Rachel said, if you actually cared about the safety of the people on the shuttle.
So the time period, this talks about the recovery window, and it says that the time period between a threat and a major accident or prevented accident in which collective action is possible. So it says, what was the recovery window in this case? So at what point could they have prevented things prevented the Columbia from falling apart and having the major accident?
Well, they should have fixed the foam issue in 1983 when they first come across it. I mean, for heaven's sake, I forgot how many, but they had several incidences of the foam breakage striking the rest of the shuttle. And it said in there that they had tried, but nothing was working. And so, they just continued on. I'm like, what kind of bogus call was that? When you're dealing with such a safety issue. So for me, that should have been prevented years ago before they even launched the shuttle at all.
Yeah. And once it was already in flight, I mean, I know it said it couldn't dock at the space station, but there has to have been something that they could do if they could have just gotten a picture of it at any time before the shuttle was at threat of losing fuel.
Mm-hmm.
So there were actually, I'm counting, there were eight missions that the Columbia took that showed damage or significant foam shedding. 8 on the same ship, the same vessel.
I think there were like 11 or 12 in all.
Yeah, but the majority of them were the Columbia. So
Yeah.
that they would have figured that out before this final one took place. What do you think? This is not one of the questions, I don't think. What do you think they could have done if they had gotten those photos while they were still up in space and realized the problem was a lot bigger than they had anticipated? What do you think they could have done from another standpoint?
I mean, maybe the crew could have gone out there and put on some slight repair on the wing so that the heat wouldn't have got in like it did. I mean, they're NASA, for crying out loud. You think they'd be able to say, okay, we're going to walk you through this step by step. You know, maybe they had equipment on board that they could have. Well, again, I don't know if they did or not, but I mean, surely they did. Like I said, I mean, I don't know.
Well, and even if they didn't, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, even if they didn't know, like right off the top of their head, there wasn't some previously done. I mean, Apollo 13 had something go horribly wrong, and they were able to put their heads together because they are NASA,
right,
and figure out a solution that may not have been ideal, but it got them home in one piece.
That's what I'm saying. They're NASA.
So even if there wasn't like an obvious solution right at the beginning, if they had actually gotten the picture, then they could have tried to find out if there was anything that they could figure out.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Christina with a K. You there? I think she's there somewhere. All right. Maybe she'll pop her head in. Oh, typing something. What does it say?
I can't get my mic to work. Yeah.
Oh, so you can chime in via texting whenever you want. We're happy to see it. We're just making sure you're there and doing okay. So Brenda didn't, I'm not sure what happened to her, so we're just filling in for her tonight.
We all got a text from her. She said she's been in bed sick all day and she forgot.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, sounds good.
That's what it said. Shoot, I forgot. I've been in bed sick all day.
Thank you for the update. Oh, there it is. You're right. Okay. All right. So the next question, it's what is the human cognitive biases, and how does it? This sounds like science class.
Right.
What is the human cognitive biases, and how does it apply in this case? And then it says that cognitive biases talks about systematic errors in judgment, a confirmation bias, a tendency to look for information that confirms our existing views. The sunk cost bias, it says our tendency to escalate commitment to a course of action into which we have already invested time, money, or other resources. So that's what the biases are. So what do you think, how do the biases apply in this case? What kind of bias can you think of that has to do with either the systematic errors of judgment or our tendency to look for something to confirm our own existing views?
Well, like as you were reading that part right there, kind of looking for something to confirm what you want it to be. Mm-hmm. I felt like that's what most of the management, if you will, was doing in this situation, because again, they were looking for anything they could to pretty much ignore the problem and just hope for the best upon reentry, because either number one, they didn't want to spend the time or the resources or the money to get something done to fix it. So, because if you read like in the meetings, you know, the dialogue of the meetings, oh, well, you know, to the best, this has happened before, so to the best that we can tell, you know, there won't be problem upon reentry or whatever.
Yeah, so the quote, like I'm reading the actual study right here, it said, it was Ham. He says, it says, Ham emphasized the tile damage constituted a turnaround issue, and then she repeatedly told the team that no catastrophic damage would occur. But she's probably justifying, oh, in the past, nothing has happened. So we assure you that this has happened before and no catastrophic damage will occur. And then, of course, if there wasn't any
there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, I was just blown away by that attitude. Like, you've got 7 people, 7 or 8 people up there, and oh, well, there's nothing we could do about it, even if there was more damage. Then I was just like, what? This person's gotta go. They don't need to be in NASA.
Right. It just seemed like the more the investigative team said, we really need a picture of this, this could be really bad, the more that the upper levels dug in their heels and said, no, this has always been fine before. We don't want, we don't need it. And it just seemed like one of those cases where the more times you were asked, the more frustrated you got, like the kid that asked for something over and over and over again. But you can't feel that way when you're NASA and you have a space shuttle that could fall apart.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. What evidence is present in the case of some of these biases? And then it says, at the flight readiness review meeting, senior NASA managers concluded that the foam shedding was an acceptable risk. Each safe return of a shuttle, despite numerous phone strikes against it, affirmed the management's belief that there was a low risk of failure. So that's what they kept going back to, saying, well, we've had all these other ones where there's been damage and they've still been able to return safely each time. And so what is shared cognitive framing? I don't know what that means. Oh, here we go. Frameworks, beliefs, and assumptions that help us simplify a complicated reality. So what frameworks, beliefs, and assumptions help us simplify a complicated reality? I feel like this is all kind of the same question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it seems like I feel like there's certain bias that get created. So let me, I'm better at stories than I am at like getting the thoughts across. So I live in a small town, really far south, and it's a good community, maybe not always the safest one. So we just take extra precautions with our kids. We're very careful with them. They don't go anywhere without a parent. They're supervised when they're outside playing. That's just how it goes around here. So I went to my sister who lives in Sandy, Utah, and I don't remember how old my kids are, but I think that they were like 3 and 5. And I woke up and my kids were nowhere to be found. And I was like, Emily, where are my kids? And she was like, oh, they're just out front playing. And I'm like, and who's watching them? She's like, nobody. They're fine. It's Sandy. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm ready to lose my mind because it only takes the one time where something goes wrong to prove all those times that everything was just fine to prove them wrong. And it felt like this was one of those things. They got lulled into this sense of security. They were like, oh, well, all these times nothing has happened. So they applied that as just like this carte blanche. Okay, because nothing's happened, nothing's going to happen. When really the threat is always there. You just have to be diligent about it.
Excellent point. So we just have to, we need to take the precautions and the preventative measures, prevent, bad things happening. Like it's the one time you leave your door unlocked and your purse in the car that it gets broken into.
Right.
And I've had that happen actually multiple times. My purse stolen multiple times out of my car. I don't know why I leave it in the car under the front seat. But and my husband's we've had checkbooks stolen out of our car. We've had computers stolen out of our car. Oh, no. We just aren't very good about locking our car or taking important things out of it.
You know what? My sister always said that if she left her car unlocked, then whatever the people got out of it, at least she didn't have to buy a new window.
Preventative measures are definitely something to keep in mind. Let me see what the next part is here. Let me click on this. Okay. Okay, it says, what evidence is present in the case of cognitive framing? And then it says that NASA views their program as an operational rather than experimental endeavor. Which causes riskier decisions? NASA sold their program on economic grounds, claiming that using a shuttle over multiple missions was more cost effective. Oh, so it's saying that they viewed their program as operational rather than experimental endeavor. I don't understand what that's talking about. It's a bad.
So, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Do you think that's a bad thing to consider it? I mean, the fact that the point is they were experimenting with safety.
So I would think of it like if somebody came up with the cure for, let's say they're inventing a blood pressure medicine, and they've tested it on a few people, and they say, oh, well, this is a really good idea, so we're just going to mass market it. But really, there's still kinks to be worked out. The FDA would shut that down so fast because it's not well tested. In this case, there was just no oversight saying, okay, you haven't done enough missions to prove all of these little things that are going wrong are not effective, because they skipped the entire experimental phase and went straight to marketing it.
And why do you think they did that?
I think that they wanted to prove that NASA could be a moneymaker. I know that most of my life I've heard, well, NASA's just one big drain on our resources. It's not worth all that scientific research they're putting into it. It's not doing any good for humankind. What did we get from going to the moon? I've heard all these arguments. And I think NASA wanted to be like, oh, no, look, we can bring money back into the economy because look what this research has done. Now we can put satellites in space.
So they're cutting costs. They're they're pushing missions forward without waiting longer because they want to stay on target. So they're cutting corners. They're reusing the same vessel that has problems over and over again. Let me go over here really quick and look. Let me see where we're at really quick. Okay. So there are problems. We already talked about this. They began years ago when it first started flying, back in the 80s. Why did debris strikes become an acceptable risk?
Because they could get by. Because it caused damage, but it hadn't to that point killed anybody. So let's just go with it, because we haven't had anything too crazy. We've only had to repair some tiles. So, I mean, again, it was just kind of it was risk. They were taking a huge risk by basically ignoring that problem just because they hadn't had any casualties to that point.
Mm-hmm. So at my work, there's lots of palm trees. And they were trying to save some money because it was an extra $8,000 to, not 8,000. I think it was a lot more than that. I don't remember. It was a huge amount of money. It might have been $8,000 to just cut a few of the palm trees because they're so high up. But the problem is, so they decided not to put in the money. And then we had several huge rainstorms. And because they didn't trim them, we have all these branches, the top heavy branches falling and hitting things. And it actually, because it didn't do the trimming, it felt like more of a liability than anything else, that it could have hit a car and caused damage, or it could have hit a person and injured them during these storms. But there's always some sort of risk when you don't take cautionary measures.
It reminds me of at work, we have a safety system where, there's a way that we know that it's safe to enter the building, and there's a way to check if that particular thing has not happened. There's a way to check and see if there is a problem. And there are people at work, because I work at a credit union, so people could be hiding in there potentially. Of course, of the entire almost year that I've worked there, and then some of the people I know who've worked there, there's never once been somebody in the building, but we still do it every single day because it only takes one time. And it's a precaution that, human lives are worth way more than that time that it takes to prevent that.
Very good. How would you characterize the culture of NASA, its strengths or weaknesses?
I don't know how it is currently, obviously. This was back in, 2003 or whatever. But in 2003, I think their culture was ambition and exploration and, definitely exciting. However, I think they had some major holes in what was their culture, major holes, because again, going back to their priority system, I think they should definitely have had more of a culture of safety first. And that might be a little too Boy Scout, but again, they were dealing with human lives, sending them up into space, which is so unpredictable. As much as they can say they've researched, again, you're going into outer space. You are leaving the planet. Yeah. So, you're going to have to be sure that you're doing everything possible to keep these people safe. So they had some pretty big holes in their culture, if you ask me, but hopefully they're better now. Who knows? I mean, we're talking almost 20 years later. So.
Well, so I have to tell you that because of this reading, I then went and looked up more information about what happened and everything. And it does say that they went in, they put in all new high definition cameras. I think they added 8 new ones with 8 different angles. And there are a couple other things, but some of my suggestions were how hard would it have been for them to just have some people that are on the shuttle? It says that they can do a walk on the exterior of the shuttle. It's not that hard to have that be in place, that somebody at some point do a walk of the shuttle. If you don't want to have to put in the money to take a flyby of a satellite, okay, so then put in place some safety stuff, make it so that they can do a walkover of the shuttle once they've exited the Earth's atmosphere and it's safe to do so. Have them do a walkover of the shuttle and make sure it's all okay. I mean, that really shouldn't be that much of a loss, and yet they would have seen the giant gaping hole in the wing.
Mm-hmm. So of the people that were part of this case, which people specifically do you think were important contributors to the mission failing?
It felt like the ham lady was.
Oh, yeah, I'd have to pull up the names again, but she did nothing. And then who was? Let me pull it up again.
I remember Rocha. Rocha was trying to do something.
Yeah.
He was talking kind of on the side, the emailer to other people, saying, "Well, they really should do this. They really should check it out. They really should. It's really not safe." And then I think he could have made a bigger deal out of it, and really push it and charged it on the meeting and said, no, this is, or gone to the next level up and said, this absolutely, you cannot. I think he could have done more. I think, like you said, Christina, with the people on the mission or on the flight, maybe they could have put their foot down and said, no, we're putting our foot down and we're absolutely not going to go past this until we do a quick check out of the exterior of the shuttle.
Have they told them? They didn't even know.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think the people on the shuttle knew. I think that their lives were being toyed with and they weren't even being told.
I don't, because there's no way for them to know. In the process of liftoff, I can't imagine they would hear or notice the foam strike on the wing. So I don't think NASA even told them. That was the impression I got.
Yeah. I got the impression it didn't even make it over to mission control. It never left NASA. like wherever the bureaucracy is. I think it was in Florida. I don't think it ever left Florida.
Mm-hmm. I think you're
'Cause
right.
it sounds like every time that they wanted to bring it up to mission control, and then by the time they did have that debriefing, this guy was umming and ahhing his way all the way through it, and he didn't even sound like he knew what he was talking about. Did anybody else notice that? Did you read the exhibits at the end?
Mm-hmm.
I did read them all.
If I had been a person in that room hearing that sort of half-hearted, I wouldn't think it was anything to worry about either.
Yeah. I think when you feel really strongly about something, I mean, it's important to make your point known. And it's funny, I had this conversation with my husband about something a couple days ago when we were driving out of town. And it had to do with some kind of medicine my son's on. So my son got really sick, and we put him on, we got him some medicine. And the medicine, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, at one of our hotels, he had this massive, massive nosebleed right when he woke up in the morning. And we got it stopped, but he was singing the national anthem. He sang the national anthem at the Jazz game last night. So that was super exciting, my 14-year-old.
It is.
But that morning, yesterday morning, before he sang the national anthem, he had this horrible nosebleed. And my husband had bought this homeopathic, in addition to all kinds of other medicines, he bought this spray, nasal spray that you keep spraying up your nose because we're trying to get him well enough to sing the national anthem. And I was feeling very strongly that these herbal things inside this nose spray might have, because he was using it a lot more than he should have been using it, to try and get him well quickly. And I told my husband, I think this might have been part of the reason he had this nosebleed. And I looked at it, and it said if you're on any kind of blood thinners or whatever, it not use this product, it can cause severe bleeding. And my husband's assured me, no, it has nothing to do with it. He needs to use it more. And at that point, I felt so strongly about it. I put my foot down. I'm like, no, he's not taking any more of this. I don't usually do that. I usually don't put my foot down with hardly anything that my husband says. But I think that when you really feel strongly about something, that it has to affect someone's health or safety, that it's important to stand up and put your foot down. And they didn't in this case. They didn't put their foot down.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I found very negligent, it is, I can't remember what her first name is, but Ms. Ham, whatever her name is, I found it really disturbing that when she found out that somebody had requested an image of the wing, she sort of half-heartedly asked a few people that are on the mission, completely ignored the investigation committee, didn't ask any of them if they had requested it, and then just denied the request saying they didn't go up the proper channels. Like, if I knew that somebody was requesting an image of the shuttle, I would be like, okay, what's going on and why is this so important? And thoroughly investigated where it came from, not just pass it off. And then when I did finally find out, been like, it's not an issue, never mind. Like, she didn't even ask the team. She just shut it down.
Yeah.
She did. And when Rocha got mad about it, he wrote an email that he didn't even send. So again, he could have done a little bit more, like Melody said. So
I feel like, he didn't have a big enough spine, and she just didn't have a big enough concern about that over her budgets and her time constraints.
Unbelievable.
So this new book that we're reading, what is it called? The 5 something or other of team. At any rate, it's about teams and teamwork, which is kind of exciting because it really, in my opinion, goes along with this case study, and the fact that they didn't have a good team working together, communicating together, being effective as a team, having the same direction, the same boundaries, the same support to make it happen. So they talk a little bit about what is the concept of team design. And then it says that 5 conditions, when present, increase the probability of team effectiveness. Do you guys happen to know what any of those 5 conditions would be?
I haven't read anything. Sorry.
I'm trying to remember. One is trust, a lack of trust, and one is keeping. Oh,
I don't know if these have anything to do with the book, the ones that it says in this case study, but it says that the 5 conditions when president increase the probability of team effectiveness are clear boundaries. So if you're clear about, safety being highest priority or something like that. The second one is compelling direction. So maybe they have a certain mythology for how they go about making decisions. Structure is important. I think their structure had problems. They had an org chart, but I don't feel like they had the right people in the meetings to resolve the issue or to make it happen. Maybe they needed something more like, our government where it has to be 100% vote to say, it's a go before they go. It felt like it came down to one person saying it's fine, let's just move on. And then another one is structure, and then a system that supports the team in completing their work. So some sort of follow through or a system.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm just seeing what else there is, but you go ahead while I'm looking.
Oh, I was just going to say, one of the things that I thought was so astounding was that here's this investigative team that's investigating the safety of the crew, and they had to go through like 4 or 5 different channels to even get the information they needed. And at any point along the way, somebody that doesn't even understand what they're investigating could decide that they don't need what they're asking for.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like if NASA was really being responsible, there would be somebody who could coordinate between all of those things, that there's only one person between that team and what they need instead of like 5.
Yeah, that was ridiculous how the imagery was requested and another person just canceled it all because it didn't go through the right lines or you couldn't see the authoritative, permission or whatever. And so they just said, oh, forget about this. And they didn't bother to figure out why or the importance of it.
Yeah.
All right. What principles, if any, it must be from this lessons reading apply to the case? Oh, that's kind of what we were talking about is teamwork, I think. How teamwork should have gone to it. I think that's pretty much it. Here's the conclusion. It says, help your groups notice the key concepts from the case, providing the summary of the discussion. Share any last comments. You guys have any last comments?
Not really. It was a sad case. It was a disappointing one. I don't know if I was just too young or what the deal was, but of course, was completely, I knew of it, but was completely ignorant as far as the details of it. And I was very surprised and disappointed by the whole thing. You have this like image of NASA, all these geniuses, putting people up in space, But then when you get down to the core of it, you just see that they function like a business, and businesses sometimes have, they aren't perfect. And I'm definitely hope they learn from that, since they are dealing with human life, not just capital. Well, it is a type of capital, I guess, just the most important kind. So anyways, yeah. I was just surprised and a little overwhelmed by it, a little mad.
You guys weren't alive for the, I don't know if you were alive or just, you're just little probably. But when the Challenger disaster happened, I was in elementary school. That was in 1986. And they actually broadcast it for all the kids to watch. Wow. So, it was a big deal. We're all watching because the very first teacher was on board and got to go to space. And we're all watching it take off, and then all of a sudden it blows up within seconds. It was just kind of, I was really young, so I don't remember it too well, but I remember it was just one of those somber moments that you're like what just happened there? And then I can't remember what happened the rest of that day, but
Wow.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming, Christina. Glad you were with a K. We're glad you were here. And we're gonna have, let's see, who would like to say the closing prayer?
I can say it since I'm teaching next week.
Okay, well, let me stop the broadcast first. So